The suitcase hit the floor so hard the handle broke. My father's face was red, veins bulging in his neck as he screamed words I'd never heard him use before. I stood there, 6 months pregnant, barefoot on the hardwood floor I'd walked across my entire life. My mother sat frozen on the couch, staring at her hands like they held answers she couldn't find. Public disgrace, he kept shouting. Humiliation. I tried to speak, but he raised his hand. Not to hit me, just to silence me. When I didn't move fast enough, he walked to the front door and yanked it open. Cold November air rushed in. Then came the sentence that split my life in two: that child will never carry my name. The door slammed behind me with such force the wreath fell off. I stood on the porch, shaking, my hand on my stomach. Through the window, I could see him already turning away. My name is Naomi Wells. This is how my father erased me. I sat on the cold porch steps, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification. My father had blocked my number. I stared at the screen in disbelief. 20 minutes hadn't passed since he threw me out, and he'd already deleted me. Through the door, I heard voices. My younger brother Tyler was asking questions. My father's response was clear and cold: she chose this. She chose that boy over this family. That's when something clicked in my mind. This wasn't about the pregnancy. It never had been. This was about control. About his authority. His reputation. His rules. I'd broken the most important one. I'd made a choice he didn't approve, and in his world, that was unforgivable. My stomach cramped, and I realized I was crying. Not from sadness yet. From shock. From the cold. From understanding. 3 weeks earlier, everything had been different. I'd told them about the pregnancy, expecting anger but hoping for eventual support. Instead, my father presented me with conditions. He sat me down at the kitchen table with documents he'd printed from somewhere. Adoption agencies. Legal papers. This can all go away quietly, he said, sliding the papers toward me. No one needs to know. You give the baby up at birth, we tell people you were studying abroad, and life continues. My mother nodded along like she'd already agreed to the script. I looked at the papers. At the agency names. At the word closed adoption highlighted in yellow. No contact ever, I read aloud. My father nodded. It's the best solution for everyone. I pushed the papers back. No. That single word was my death sentence. He stood up, face hardening. Then you've made your choice. After my father went to bed that night 3 weeks ago, I found my mother alone in the kitchen. She was washing dishes that were already clean, her hands moving in circles that meant nothing. Mom, I said softly. She didn't turn around. Please don't make this harder, she whispered. I stepped closer. You can't actually agree with this. With throwing me out. With making me give up my baby. Her hands stilled in the soapy water. For a moment, I thought she might turn around, might hug me, might be my mother. Instead, she said the words that hurt more than any of my father's shouting. You know how he is, Naomi. You've always known. I stood there, waiting for more. For something. She dried her hands and walked past me without making eye contact. That night, I understood I was truly alone. The studio apartment was tiny, located above a laundromat in the cheap part of town. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, took pity on me when I showed up with my broken suitcase and obvious pregnancy. She waived the security deposit and gave me the first month free. The furniture came from a church donation program and a thrift store. A mattress on the floor. A table with 3 legs that wobbled. A lamp that flickered but worked. I taped my ultrasound photo to the wall above where I slept. In the grainy image, my baby's profile was just barely visible. I touched the photo with shaking fingers and made a promise out loud: you will never feel unwanted. Never. I will make sure of that. I got a job waitressing at night and enrolled in online classes during the day. Between shifts, I threw up in the restaurant bathroom and pretended everything was fine. It wasn't fine. But it was mine. Labor started at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday in March. I called a taxi because I had no one else to call. The driver was kind, helping me into the hospital while I gripped his arm through contractions. He wished me luck and wouldn't let me tip him. The labor lasted 19 hours. 19 hours of pain that felt like my body was being torn apart and rebuilt. No family came. No father paced in the waiting room. No mother held my hand. The nurses were gentle, but they couldn't fill that void. When my baby finally cried, that first sharp wail that meant breath and life, something inside me broke and healed at the same time. I held my daughter against my chest, her tiny fist gripping my finger, and I understood something terrifying and powerful. I was completely alone. But I was also completely free. Naming her felt sacred. I sat in the hospital bed, my daughter asleep in my arms, and thought about what I wanted her to carry through life. Not my father's last name. Not his legacy of control and conditions. I chose carefully. Autumn Rose Wells. Autumn for new beginnings, for transformation, for the season when everything changes but promises to return. Rose for strength, for beauty that persists through difficulty. Wells, my own last name, but not his. My mother's maiden name that I reclaimed as mine. When the nurse came to fill out the birth certificate, she read the name aloud and smiled. Beautiful, she said. I signed the paper and felt something shift. This wasn't just my daughter's beginning. It was mine too. That name was my first act of defiance. Of reclamation. Of choosing hope over bitterness. I whispered it to my sleeping daughter, Autumn Rose Wells, you are wanted. When Autumn was 3 months old, Tyler showed up at my apartment. I hadn't heard from him since the night I was kicked out. He stood in my doorway, looking uncomfortable, holding a folded piece of paper. Dad wanted me to give you this, he said, not meeting my eyes. I unfolded the paper. It was a message in my father's handwriting. You can come back if you've learned your lesson. The offer still stands. No mention of Autumn. No apology. No acknowledgement that I'd given birth, that he had a granddaughter, that months had passed. Just conditions. Always conditions. Tyler shifted his weight. He thinks you'll come around. That being poor and alone will make you see sense. I looked at Autumn sleeping in her second-hand bassinet. Then I looked at my brother. Tell him no. Don't explain. Just say no. Tyler nodded and left. I never answered that message. The rumors reached me through old friends who still talked to family. My father was telling people I'd run away. That I'd been reckless and ungrateful. That he'd tried to help me, but I'd refused. The story he created had me as the villain. Him as the suffering father. My mother apparently nodded along, adding details about how worried they were. I heard all this while changing diapers in a laundromat bathroom because my apartment's plumbing had broken. I heard it while counting coins to buy formula. I heard it while studying for exams with my daughter strapped to my chest because I couldn't afford childcare. The injustice burned in my throat. I wanted to scream the truth. To defend myself. To make everyone know what he'd done. Instead, I focused on surviving. On showing up to every shift. On passing every class. Something was hardening inside me. Not bitterness. Something sharper. Something that would matter later. Professor Martinez noticed me because I never missed her class, even when I showed up with spit up on my shoulder and exhaustion in my eyes. After one lecture, she asked me to stay. You have a gift for this, she said, pointing to my assignment on emergency response protocols. I'd written it during Autumn's 3 a.m. feeding, researching between paragraphs of exhausted typing. Have you considered medical services? I almost laughed. Me, with no money, no support, no time? But Professor Martinez didn't laugh. She helped me apply for scholarships, connected me with programs for single mothers, showed me a path I'd never imagined possible. Your circumstances don't define your capability, she said. For the first time in months, my future looked like more than just survival. It looked like something I could build. Something that could matter. Autumn was sleeping in her carrier beside me. I thought about what I wanted to teach her about possibility. There were nights I didn't eat. Nights when Autumn had formula and I had water and determination. I bought her clothes from thrift stores and wore the same 3 shirts in rotation. I studied while nursing her to sleep, highlighting textbooks with one hand and supporting her head with the other. My body ached constantly. From carrying her, from the standing shifts at the restaurant, from the lack of sleep that became my normal. But I also felt something else. Pride. Deep, bone-level pride that I was doing this. That she was healthy and loved and thriving. That every sacrifice meant something. When she smiled at me, I forgot the hunger. When she learned to clap, I cried at my kitchen table. I was giving her what my parents never gave me. Not money or status or family connections. I was giving her unconditional love. That was worth every skipped meal. Every exhausted morning. Every moment of doubt. The news came through Tyler again, though this time he called instead of visited. "Dad's business is failing," he said quietly. I could hear something in his voice. Not quite satisfaction, but awareness. Our father owned a construction company he'd built over 30 years. His pride and identity. His proof of success. But he'd managed it the same way he managed family, with fear and control. Good employees had left. Contracts had fallen through. Tyler said people were tired of his temper, his demands, his need to dominate every situation. His losing it, Tyler continued. The control. The respect. Everything. I thought about the man who'd thrown me out, so certain of his power. So sure he was right. "How's Mom handling it?" I asked. Tyler sighed. She still defends him. But I can see it in her face. She knows. I hung up feeling strange. Not happy about his failure. Just observant. The king was falling, and I was too busy building my own kingdom to care. 4 years later, my mother called for the first time since I'd been kicked out. Autumn was in preschool. I was finishing my emergency medical training. Life had found a rhythm. "Naomi," my mother's voice cracked. "Your father is sick. Very sick." I sat down slowly. She explained. "A heart condition. Serious. Maybe critical." The doctors were worried. She was crying, words tumbling out about tests and prognoses and fear. Then came the ask, "Can you put things aside? Can you come see him?" I looked at the photos on my fridge. Autumn's school picture. Her first day of daycare. 4 years of moments he'd missed by choice. "Has he asked about Autumn?" I said quietly. The silence stretched long and heavy. "Naomi, please," my mother started. "Has he asked about her? Has he ever asked?" More silence. That silence was my answer. "I need to think," I said and ended the call. My hands were shaking. Not from sadness. From something else. From power. Autumn was 6 when she asked the question. We were at the park, watching other kids with grandparents pushing swings and taking pictures. "Why don't I have a grandma and grandpa?" she asked, her small hand in mine. I'd been preparing for this question for years. I sat down on the bench and pulled her close. "Sometimes families are complicated," I said carefully. "My parents and I don't talk anymore. They made choices I couldn't agree with. But that doesn't mean you're missing anything. You have me, and you have people who love you." She thought about this seriously. "Did you do something bad?" "No, sweetheart. I chose to keep you, and they wanted me to give you away. I couldn't do that." She hugged me tight. "I'm glad you kept me." I held her, smelling her strawberry shampoo, feeling her trust. Me too. Every single day. I let her decide who she wanted to be. Not bitter. Not defined by absence. Just loved. The milestone came quietly. I signed the papers for my first real apartment, a 2-bedroom with actual furniture I'd purchased new. My emergency medical certification was complete. I had a stable job at the hospital with benefits and respect. Autumn was thriving in school, making friends, learning piano. One night, after putting her to bed, I sat in my living room and realized something stunning. I was okay. More than okay. I was stable. Secure. At peace. My father's opinion didn't matter anymore. His approval wasn't something I needed. I'd built this life from nothing, from a broken suitcase and a cold porch, and I'd succeeded. Not to prove him wrong. Not to win some invisible competition. Just to survive and then to thrive. The absence of his presence had stopped being a wound. It was just a fact. He didn't have anything I needed. That realization felt like setting down a weight I'd carried for years. The second call from my mother came on a Thursday morning. I was at the hospital, between shifts, when her number flashed on my screen. "He's worse," she said immediately. "Naomi, they don't know if he'll make it. His heart is failing faster than they expected. They need a specialist, but there's complications with his case." I could hear panic in her voice. Real fear. Tyler got on the phone next. "There's something else," he said carefully. "It's a rare condition. The cardiac specialist they need isn't available. They're calling in favors, checking everywhere." I felt something cold slide down my spine. What kind of specialist? Tyler explained the medical terms. I knew them. I'd studied them. I'd trained specifically in cardiac emergency protocols. "How much time?" I asked. "Days, maybe." They're scrambling. The family was panicking, I realized. Running in circles. And they had no idea. They had absolutely no idea about the irony heading their way. The revelation hit them on Friday. I got the call from Tyler, his voice shaking. "Naomi, this is going to sound crazy, but Dad's doctor mentioned they need someone with your exact specialty. Emergency cardiac intervention. And I remembered you finished that certification." He paused. "Can you help? Do you know anyone?" I sat very still. Professor Martinez's words echoed in my head from years ago. "Your circumstances don't define your capability." I'd spent 6 years training for this. 6 years building expertise while raising Autumn alone. While surviving. While being erased from family stories. My father was dying from a condition I was trained to handle. The child he'd rejected had grown into someone who could save him. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. "I might know someone," I said carefully. Tyler exhaled in relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you give me their number?" I took a breath. "Tyler, I'm the someone. I'm the specialist." The silence on the other end was thunderous. I didn't rush to the hospital. I didn't grab my keys and race to his bedside. Instead, I picked Autumn up from school and took her for ice cream. We sat in our favorite booth, and I told her everything. About my father. About being kicked out. About the years of absence. About the phone call. She was 11 now, old enough to understand complexity. "He needs help," she asked carefully. I nodded. "And you can help him?" I nodded again. She ate her ice cream thoughtfully. Finally, she asked, "Do you want to?" I considered that question honestly. I don't know. But I think it's not about what I want. It's about what's right. She looked at me with eyes so much wiser than her years. "Then we should help. Not for him. For you." I hugged her tight. The decision was made. Not out of revenge. Not out of obligation. But out of choice. The same choice I'd made 11 years ago on that cold porch. To be better than what was done to me. The hospital room was private, expensive, full of machines that beeped and hummed. I stood at the doorway in my professional uniform, my credentials visible, my daughter's hand in mine. My mother saw me first. Her face went white. Tyler stood up quickly, relief and confusion mixing. And then my father's eyes opened and found mine. I hadn't seen him in 11 years. He looked smaller now. Grayer. Afraid. Not the powerful figure who'd thrown me out. Just a sick man in a hospital bed. I stepped forward professionally, Autumn staying back near Tyler. "I'm Dr. Wells," I said clearly. "I understand you need cardiac intervention." My father's voice was weak. "Naomi." I didn't acknowledge the name. I just moved to his bedside, checking his monitors, reviewing his charts. My training took over. My expertise. The years of study and sacrifice. And somewhere in that moment, the power shifted permanently. He wasn't the authority anymore. I was. He needed me. Not the other way around. The procedure took 3 hours. I worked with focus and precision, my team following my lead. Professor Martinez had once told me I had natural instinct for crisis medicine. Now I understood what she meant. I didn't think about my father. I thought about the problem. The solution. The steps required to fix what was failing. When his heartbeat stabilized, when the monitors showed normal rhythm, when the danger passed, the nurses exhaled in relief. "Excellent work, Dr. Wells," the attending physician said, shaking my hand. My father survived because of the very existence he'd tried to erase. The daughter he'd thrown away had saved his life. I removed my gloves and walked to the waiting room where my family Saturday. My mother stood immediately, tears streaming. Tyler looked stunned. And Autumn, my beautiful Autumn, looked proud. "He's stable," I said professionally. "He'll recover." My mother reached for me. I stepped back gently. Not cruelly. Just firmly. Some distances can't be crossed with gratitude alone. 2 days later, my father was conscious enough to talk. I came alone, leaving Autumn with a friend. He looked at me from his bed, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that kept him breathing, kept him alive. "Naomi," he said, voice rough. I don't know what to say. I pulled up a chair but didn't sit close. "Then listen." He nodded weakly. The apology came in pieces. Clumsy and late. He said he'd been protecting the family. That he'd been raised a certain way. That he didn't know how to handle my situation. Classic excuses wrapped in regret. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I just let him finish. When he stopped talking, I spoke quietly. "You threw me out when I was 6 months pregnant. I was barefoot on the porch in November. You blocked my number. You spread rumors that I ran away. You never asked about your granddaughter." Each fact landed like a stone. He closed his eyes. I know I failed you." I leaned forward slightly. "You didn't just fail me. You tried to erase me. You gave me conditions instead of love. You valued your reputation over your daughter. You chose control over compassion." My voice wasn't angry. It was steady. Calm. Surgical in its precision. I slept on a mattress on the floor. I skipped meals so my daughter could eat. I studied through exhaustion because I refused to let your rejection define my life. I built everything you see now from nothing. He was crying now, tears sliding down his face. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I was so wrong." I sat back. "Yes, you were. And no apology changes those years. No gratitude erases what you did. You're alive because my daughter, your granddaughter, taught me about compassion. She's the one who told me to help you. Not because you deserved it. Because it was right." The quiet truth devastated him more than any shouting could have. I saw it in his face. Real understanding. Too late, but real. Before I left that day, my father asked the question I'd been expecting. "Can I meet her? Can I be part of your lives?" I stood at the door, my hand on the frame. For a moment, I felt the pull. The little girl inside me who'd wanted her father's approval. Who'd wanted to be enough. But I wasn't that little girl anymore. "No," I said gently but firmly. He flinched like I'd struck him. "Not because I'm cruel. Because I have to protect what I've built. Autumn deserves relationships that are healthy and unconditional. If she decides later that she wants to know you, that will be her choice. Not mine. Not yours." My mother made a sound in the corner. I hadn't realized she was there. "Naomi, please," I looked at her. "You had chances to stand up. You chose silence. I respect your choice. Now respect mine." I walked out knowing the control he'd once wielded was gone forever. The power had shifted. And it wasn't going back. In the weeks after my father's recovery, the family structure I'd been exiled from began to collapse. Tyler called me regularly now, updating me on things I hadn't asked about. Without my father's authority, old resentments surfaced. My mother finally spoke up about years of being silenced. Tyler confronted him about controlling behavior. Other relatives who'd stayed quiet started asking questions. The rumors my father had spread about me came back to haunt him. People wanted to know why his medical specialist daughter hadn't been in his life. Tyler told them the truth. My father's business didn't recover. His reputation, built on control and fear, crumbled when people saw weakness. The family gatherings became tense silences instead of forced performances. Tyler said he was sorry for not defending me 11 years ago. I told him I forgave him. He was young then. Afraid. I understood. The family was fracturing under the weight of years of silence and fear. And I watched from a distance, grateful I'd built something different. Autumn is 15 now. She plays piano beautifully. She wants to study medicine like her mother. She knows her grandfather's story, and she's chosen not to have a relationship with him. That's her choice, and I respect it. We live in a house we picked out together, with a garden she tends and rooms filled with laughter. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not forgiving my father. If I feel guilty. I tell them honestly, I don't regret protecting my daughter from conditional love. I don't regret choosing peace over performing. I watch Autumn do her homework at our kitchen table, and I remember that ultrasound photo taped to a wall in a studio apartment. The promise I made. She has never felt unwanted. Not for a single day. My father lives with his choices. I live with mine. I didn't win by destroying him. I didn't even win by saving him. I won by becoming everything he tried to stop me from being. Strong. Independent. Compassionate. Free. The greatest revenge wasn't success. It was raising someone with love, strength, and freedom. That's the legacy I chose. That's the life I built.